A year ago today sparks the start of the worst humanitarian crisis that I can remember in my lifetime, which was the terrorist attack by Hamas on October 7th. During that attack, over 1,200 Israelis were killed and 251 hostages were taken by Hamas. But I want to talk about some of the things that led up to that. I want to talk about the fallout afterwards, what's happened in Gaza afterwards, and how that's being covered, and how the U.S. politicians have handled this. And it's been an absolute travesty. Guys, it won't be a happy video, but if you could do me a favor, just like and subscribe. This probably won't get out on too much of YouTube. It tends to get suppressed. But I wanted to mention that before October 7th, because this whole conflict did not start on October 7th, but before October 7th of 2023, 2023 was one of the worst years for Palestinian civilians in terms of how many were either injured or killed by Israeli forces. Just before October 7th, the IDF stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is also part of a holy site for Jews as well. They know it as Temple Mount, but there was the IDF basically started attacking Palestinian civilians at Al-Aqsa, which is what that video was from the opening. And then on October 7th, like I said, 1,200 people killed, 251 hostages taken. And since then, what's happened in Gaza, there's literally absolutely no excuse for it. So I'm going to cover how the news is covering this, and then I'll go over what the actual numbers are. So let's just take a look at how some of the news is being covered here.
Solemn milestone 1 year since the Hamas terror attack that killed more than 1,200 people in Israel. 251 others were also kidnapped, and since then, more than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed in the Israel-Hamas war. That's according to the Gaza Health Ministry. And right now, more than 90 hostages remain in captivity, including 4 Americans. Alice Barr reports from Washington.
Across Israel today, ceremonies mark 1 year of anguish, of hostages separated from their families.
We're missing so much.
Of Palestinians living through unbearable conditions, more than 40,000 dead, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. And 365 days after Hamas militants attacked inside Israel, killing 1,200 and kidnapping more than 200, the suffering is only growing. Israel now battling Hezbollah militants in Lebanon and vowing retaliation against Iranian missile strikes. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not backing down.
Israel has both the duty and the right to defend itself.
That's despite growing criticism, including from the U.S., about the devastating toll on civilians and the fear of an all-out regional war. Vice President Kamala Harris on CBS 60 Minutes backing Israel's right to defend itself while stressing the need for a ceasefire.
The need for humanitarian aid, the need for this war to end, the need for a deal to be done which would release the hostages.
But those negotiations are deadlocked, raising questions about the U.S.'s ability to influence Israeli policy. President Biden sharpening his rhetoric toward Prime Minister Netanyahu.
No administration has helped Israel more than I have. None. 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 And I think Bibi should remember that.
Hostage families pleading for a breakthrough.
I will not allow myself to lose my hope, because if I do, who will scream for Keith?
The cries of millions growing more desperate with no end in sight. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
And with war in the Middle East looming over the presidential race, both nominees will be commemorating today's anniversary. Vice President Kamala Harris is set to speak in Washington and plant a memorial tree, while former President Trump is due to address Jewish community leaders at an event at his golf course down in Miami.
Okay, so that's how the news is covering it. I have a lot of problems with this. So they do show some of the footage of what's going on in Gaza, but I want to go through what the actual numbers are, because it is just mind-boggling how bad it is. And I also want everybody to remember, as we go through these numbers, that Joe Biden said nobody has done as much for Israel as I have. None, no one, right? And he's sitting there hugging Bibi Netanyahu, who is a psychopathic war criminal. So I'm going to go through the numbers, and then, like I said, as I go through this, just keep in mind that Israel has the right to defend itself. Remember that. Israel has the right to defend itself. So here we go. In Gaza, at least 41,870 people, including 16,765 children. Okay, this is in 1 year. All right. Now these numbers, it is just one source, but everything that I've seen is that a minimum of 40,000 people have been killed. And then you've got a bunch of other people that are either unidentified, like they've been so, mangled by the bombing or being burned or whatever, that they're not identified, or they're still missing under the rubble of the bombing. So you've got 41,870 people killed, including 16,765 children, 97,166 people injured, and more than 10,000 missing. Now, it goes on to talk about the occupied West Bank, but I don't even want to deal with the West Bank or Lebanon or anything else. I just want to deal with Gaza in this. In Israel, 1,139 people have been killed and at least 8,730 people injured. And then this gives you the side-by-side comparison of how many people have been killed in Israel, injured in Israel, and killed in Gaza and injured in Gaza. Really important to note here, 16,756 children. Guys, that is 40% of the people who have been killed are under the age of 18. Now, it's also important to remember that Hamas was elected back in 2006. So half of the country, half of Gaza, are children. Like 47% of Gaza are children. And so most of these kids weren't even alive when Hamas took control of Gaza, much less were they able to vote back then. So, like I said, keep that in mind as we go through this. Devastation across Gaza. More than half of Gaza's homes have been either damaged or destroyed. 80% of commercial facilities have been damaged or destroyed. 87% of schools have been damaged or destroyed. 9 out of 10. Schools. 17 of 36, so almost half of hospitals are partially functioning. 68% of road networks destroyed. 68% of cropland destroyed. So remember in this too, that they are bombing schools. Israel is. They're bombing schools. They're bombing hospitals. They're bombing people's houses. They're bombing mosques. They're bombing UN buildings. This is completely and totally unexcusable. And then this goes through and just shows you infrastructure damaged by Israel in Gaza. And I'm going to show you a little bit more as well on just how crazy this is. This goes on to show you how there's really no place for them to go. And guys, keep in mind that Gaza is completely surrounded by Israel. Israel controls the water there. And there's a very, very robust perimeter that goes all the way around Gaza that Israel controls, and they control everything coming in and out of Gaza. They also control all of the water, the electricity, which they shut off after October 7th, the fuel, the food, the humanitarian aid moving in and out, all of it. There are 2.3 million people that live in Gaza, or that did live in Gaza. Of the 2.3 million people in Gaza, 1.9 million of those people have been displaced. That's 85% of the population of Gaza has been displaced. If you just take the numbers of 41,000, however many people killed in Gaza, divided by 365 days, that means that 115 people are killed every single day on average in Gaza. 115. If you just take the numbers of 41,870 people killed in Gaza versus 1,139 people killed in Israel, that means it's over 36 times higher. Since 2007, Israel has maintained strict control over the border of Gaza, all of the water, electricity, fuel, everything. And that's also infrastructure that Israel has bombed since then, which is illegal under international law. Now, at the end of that video that I just showed you, what's really telling is not only does Biden come out and say that nobody has done more for Israel than he has, which is a very damning indictment of how he views this, because you know that Biden has this information. This isn't like a secret. It's out all over the internet. And I'm sure that they have even more details than we do about the number of casualties that have been suffered by Palestine. Kamala Harris is planning on planting a tree, and Donald Trump is planning on addressing Jewish leaders at his golf course. So this is this is going to be the thing that the Biden administration is remembered for, despite everything good that they've done, and they have done a lot of good. You know, you can talk about the Inflation Reduction Act, the American Rescue Plan, all the jobs that they've created, CHIPS Act, infrastructure bill, all of that. They've done really good work with labor, with unions, and all of that is going to be, it's going to shadow in comparison to the horrific mismanagement of this crisis. And I want to be super, super clear about this. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Tony Blinken, the U.S. State Department, all of these jokers know that this is a genocide. They don't want to admit it because that would mean that we're also breaking international law, but they know what Israel's doing. They know that Israel is bombing civilian infrastructure. They know that they are slaughtering children, and they have done absolutely nothing to stop it. Everything that's happening in Israel right now is happening with our money, our weapons, and our blessing. Because no matter what they say, where they say they want to have a ceasefire, it doesn't matter what you say, it's what you do. And every time it's gotten worse and worse and worse, and Israel has gotten more and more and more vicious, Biden has continued to send them more money and more weapons. And I think the real failing is Kamala Harris has not taken the opportunity to distance herself from Biden. This issue is extremely important, especially to Muslim American voters. But like, this would be the one thing that I would absolutely break with Biden on. It's like it's deeply, deeply, deeply unpopular. And so it's dumb from a political strategy standpoint to continue to both sides this and say, well, We want Israel to have the right to defend themselves. Guys, the numbers don't lie. We're talking about 41,000 compared to 1,139. It's off the charts how many more people have been killed by Israel. And even if we're being super, super, super charitable to Israel, and they, according to their numbers, they say that they've killed somewhere between 17,000 and 18,000 Hamas fighters. If that's true, that would mean that still more than half of the people who Israel has killed in 1 year have been innocent people. And that's a seriously damning indictment of our number one ally in the Middle East. Guys, let me know what you think about all this. It's super sad. I can't even begin to describe how disgusted I am with the United States government stance on what's happening in Israel. And like I said, that's not to say anything about what's going on with the bombing campaign now into Lebanon, which they're calling a limited incursion. What's going on with them stepping up occupation and, the violence in the West Bank, the Golan Heights, Syria. That's to say none of that. This is just talking about Gaza, and it's been wiped off the map in our name with our money and our weapons. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't already, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.